I still remember the day I found out about my wife's infidelity. It was a Tuesday, and I had come home early from work hoping to surprise her with dinner. Instead, I was the one who got the surprise. As I walked into our bedroom, I saw her phone buzzing on the nightstand. Curious, I picked it up and glanced at the screen. It was a text from someone named Michael. "I can't wait to see you tonight," it read. My heart sank. Who was Michael? And why was he so eager to see my wife? I scrolled through the messages, each one a dagger to my heart. They had been seeing each other for months. The texts were explicit, filled with plans for their next rendezvous and reminiscing about their previous encounters. My first reaction was disbelief, followed by a wave of anger so intense I could barely see straight. I needed to confront her to get answers. But first, I needed proof. So I started collecting evidence, taking screenshots of the messages and saving them to a secret folder on my laptop. That night, I pretended everything was normal. We had dinner, talked about our day, and went to bed. But inside, I was seething. I needed a plan, and I needed to know more about this Michael. The following weekend, I told my wife I had to go out of town for work. In reality, I had tracked down Michael's address. He lived in a suburban neighborhood not too far from us. As I drove up to his house, I felt a mix of nerves and rage. This was the man who had been sleeping with my wife. I parked down the street and watched his house. It didn't take long for him to appear. He was tall, athletic, and annoyingly handsome, the kind of guy you couldn't help but feel insecure around. I followed him to a nearby coffee shop, watching as he went about his day, oblivious to the fact that his life was about to change. That night, I broke into his house. It was surprisingly easy. I knew he was out of town for the weekend. My wife had mentioned it in one of her texts. I crept through his home, looking for anything that would give me more insight into their affair. In his bedroom, I found a drawer filled with photos of them together. They looked happy. It made me sick. As I was about to leave, I heard the front door open. Panic surged through me. I hadn't expected him back so soon. I quickly hid in the bathroom, my heart pounding in my chest. He headed straight for the shower. The sound of running water filled the house, giving me a moment to gather my thoughts. This was it. This was my chance. I pulled out the gun I had brought with me. It wasn't loaded yet. I had hoped I wouldn't have to use it, but now I wasn't so sure. Quietly, I crept upstairs and into the bathroom. He was in the shower, his back to me. I opened the shower door and pointed the gun at him. "Any man who stalks another man's wife and sleeps with her doesn't deserve to live," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. His eyes widened in shock, and he started to speak, but I didn't give him the chance. I fired 2 bullets into his groin, 2 into his stomach, 2 into his chest, and 2 into his head. The sound of gunfire was deafening, and his body slumped to the floor, lifeless. I stood there for a moment, staring at the mess I had made, but my revenge was just beginning. As I drove away from Michael's house, a strange calm settled over me. The man who had destroyed my marriage was gone. But what about my wife? She was just as guilty, maybe even more so. She had betrayed me, lied to me, and shattered the life we had built together. I knew what I had to do next. This wasn't just about punishing Michael. It was about making sure my wife never forgot what she had done. And I had the perfect plan to ensure she paid for her betrayal every single day. The drive back home felt surreal. The night's events played over and over in my mind, but I forced myself to focus. I needed to keep a clear head. As I pulled into the driveway, I took a deep breath and rehearsed the story I'd tell my wife. I walked into the house, trying to appear as normal as possible. She was in the living room, reading a book. She looked up and smiled at me, oblivious to the fact that her lover was lying dead in his own bathroom. "Hey, honey," she said, closing her book. "How was your trip?" "Long and exhausting," I replied, forcing a smile. "I'm going to take a shower and hit the sack." I headed upstairs, my mind racing. I needed to find a way to confront her without raising suspicion. As I undressed, I glanced at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were cold, hardened by what I had done and what I still needed to do. The next morning, I decided to take the day off work. I told my wife I was feeling under the weather, which wasn't entirely untrue. The events of the previous night had taken a toll on me. She seemed concerned, but I could see the relief in her eyes. She was probably glad to have a day where she didn't have to sneak around. While she was out running errands, I went through her phone again. There were no new messages from Michael, which wasn't surprising. I checked her email and found a receipt for a hotel room booked for the following weekend. Another rendezvous, no doubt. When she returned, I was ready. "Honey, we need to talk," I said, sitting her down in the kitchen. Her eyes widened slightly, but she tried to play it cool. "Sure, what's up?" "I found this," I said, holding up my phone with the hotel receipt displayed. "Care to explain?" Her face paled. "Oh, that S for a business trip," she stammered. "I must have forgotten to mention it." "Really?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You expect me to believe that?" She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Why are you checking my emails? Why are you lying to me?" I shot back. "Who S, Michael?" She froze, her eyes widening in shock. "But what are you talking about?" I tossed her phone onto the table, open to the messages between her and Michael. "You've been cheating on me, haven't you?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized she was caught. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "It was a mistake. I never meant to hurt you." "A mistake?" I laughed bitterly. "How long has this been going on?" "A few months," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know how to end it." "Well, it's over now," I said coldly. "I know about everything, and I am done." She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I watched her, feeling a mix of satisfaction and pity. She had betrayed me, but she was still the woman I had loved. I needed time to process everything, to figure out my next move. "Pack your things," I said quietly. "I want you out by the end of the day." "Please, Rob, don't do this," she begged. "We can work through this. I love you." "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this," I replied, my voice cold and detached. "Get out." She packed her bags, crying the entire time. I watched her leave, feeling a strange sense of closure. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. I had taken care of Michael, but the pain of her betrayal was still fresh, and I wasn't sure if I could ever truly move on. I spent the next few days in a daze, going through the motions of everyday life. But at night, my mind was filled with thoughts of revenge, not just against her, but against anyone who had ever wronged me. One evening, as I was scrolling through her messages again, I found something that caught my eye. An email from an unknown sender with an attachment. Curious, I opened it. It was a video. I watched in horror as the screen filled with images of my wife and Michael in bed together. The date on the video was just a few days before I had killed him. My blood boiled as I realized the extent of their betrayal. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about making sure they paid for what they had done. I knew what I had to do next. I couldn't sleep that night. The video played on a loop in my mind, a constant reminder of my wife's betrayal. The rage that had simmered inside me for days boiled over. I knew I had to take action, but I needed a plan. The next morning, I decided to pay a visit to an old friend who could help me get what I needed. Tommy was a private investigator with a knack for digging up dirt. We'd gone to high school together, and he owed me a favor. I called him and arranged to meet at a diner on the outskirts of town. When I arrived, Tommy was already there, sipping on a cup of coffee. He looked up and gave me a nod as I slid into the booth across from him. "Rob, long time no see," he said, setting his cup down. "What's going on?" "I need your help, Tommy," I replied, leaning in. "It's about my wife. She's been cheating on me, and I need to know everything. Who she's been with, where they've met, all of it." Tommy raised an eyebrow. "Sounds serious. You got any leads?" I handed him a flash drive with all the evidence ID gathered. "This is everything I've found so far. Texts, emails, even a video. I need more, though. I need to know if there are others." He nodded, pocketing the flash drive. "I'll see what I can do. Might take a few days, but I'll get you what you need." "Thanks, Tommy. I appreciate it," I said, shaking his hand. As I drove back home, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. Tommy would dig up the dirt, and I'd finally have all the information I needed to confront my wife fully. But in the meantime, I had to keep myself busy. A few days later, Tommy called me with an update. Rob, you're not going to believe this. Turns out Michael wasn't the only one. Your wife S been busy. My heart sank. What do you mean? There's another guy, Tommy said. Some lawyer she's been seeing for a few months, named S. Brad. I've got photos, texts, the whole 9 yards. I clenched my fist, anger bubbling up again. Where does he live? Tommy gave me the address. Be careful, Rob. This guy's not like Michael. He's got connections and he's not afraid to use them. Thanks for the heads up, Tommy, I said, ending the call. I knew I had to confront Brad, but I needed to be smart about it. I couldn't just barge in like I had with Michael. This time I had to be more discreet. So I decided to follow him, gather more information before making my move. For the next few days, I tailed Brad, watching his every move. He was a creature of habit, always following the same routine. It didn't take long for me to find a pattern. Every Thursday night, he went to a bar downtown, that S where I'd confront him. Thursday night came, and I parked my car a few blocks away from the bar. I watched as Brad entered, a smug look on his face. He had no idea what was coming. I waited for about an hour before making my move. The bar was crowded, which worked to my advantage. I slipped inside, keeping to the shadows as I made my way toward Brad. He was sitting at the bar, chatting with a woman who looked all too familiar. My wife. Rage surged through me as I watched them together, laughing and flirting like nothing was wrong. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. This wasn't the place for a confrontation. I needed to get him alone. I waited until they left the bar, trailing them as they walked to his car. Once they were inside, I followed them to a hotel on the outskirts of town. I watched as they checked in, my blood boiling with every passing second. When they disappeared into their room, I made my move. I bribed the hotel clerk for a key to their room and quietly made my way upstairs. As I stood outside their door, I could hear them inside, laughing and talking. I took a deep breath and unlocked the door, stepping inside. They were in bed, completely oblivious to my presence, until I spoke. "Enjoying yourselves?" They both jumped, my wife's face paling as she saw me standing there. "Rob, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I replied coldly, "but I think I already know the answer." Brad scrambled out of bed, trying to gather his clothes. "Look, man, this isn't what it looks like." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, it is exactly what it looks like." I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos Tommy had taken. "You thought you could get away with this? Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" My wife started to cry, but I was beyond caring. "Rob, please, I can explain." "I don't want to hear it," I snapped. "I have given you every chance and you've thrown them all away." Brad tried to speak, but I silenced him with a glare. "Get out, both of you, and don't ever come near me again." They quickly gathered their things and fled the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. As I stood there, I realized that this was far from over. There was still more to uncover, more people to confront, but I was ready. The next morning, I felt a strange sense of calm. Brad and my wife were out of my life, but the damage they had done remained. I knew there were more layers to this betrayal, and I had to uncover them all. I needed to see how deep the rabbit hole went. Tommy called me later that day, confirming my suspicions. "Rob, there's more. I've been digging deeper into your wife's activities. She's been seeing yet another guy. His name is David. He has a coworker. They've been meeting up after work." "How long?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "About a year," Tommy replied. "I've got photos, texts, and even some recordings. This guy is smart, though. He covers his tracks well." "Send me everything you have," I said, my resolve hardening. "It's time to end this." I spent the next few hours going through the evidence Tommy had sent me. It was worse than I had imagined. My wife and David had been sneaking around, meeting in hotel rooms, exchanging intimate messages, and even making plans for a future together. Each new piece of evidence felt like a dagger to the heart, but it also fueled my determination to confront her once and for all. That evening, I waited for her to come home. I needed to catch her off guard, to see the look on her face when I confronted her with the truth. When she finally walked through the door, I was ready. "Rob, what is wrong?" she asked, sensing the tension in the air. "Sit down," I said, pointing to the couch. We need to talk. She looked confused but complied. What S going on? I tossed a folder onto the coffee table. Open it. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Photos of her with David, text messages, and receipts for hotel rooms. She looked up at me, tears welling in her eyes. Rob, I can explain, she began, but I cut her off. Explain? You've been lying to me for years. Michael, Brad, and now David? How many more are there? She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm so sorry, Rob. I never wanted to hurt you. Never wanted to hurt me? I laughed bitterly. You destroyed our marriage. You made a mockery of everything we had. Please, Rob, give me another chance, she begged. I'll do anything to make it right. It's too late for that, I said coldly. Pack your things and get out. I don't want to see you again. As she packed her bags, I felt a strange sense of relief. This chapter of my life was coming to an end, but I knew there was still more to be done. The following day, I met up with Tommy again. I need one more favor, I said, handing him a list of names. These are people I suspect she might have been involved with. Can you look into them for me? Consider it done, Tommy replied, taking the list. I spent the next few days in a haze, waiting for Tommy's call. When it finally came, I was ready for whatever he had to tell me. Rob, I've got some news, Tommy said. You were right, there are more. 3 more to be exact. All co-workers. My stomach churned. Who are they? Mark, James, and Greg, Tommy said. I've got the evidence. Do you want to see it? No, I replied, feeling exhausted. I believe you. Just send it to me. As I hung up the phone, I realized that my wife's betrayal ran deeper than I had ever imagined. She had been living a double life, deceiving me at every turn. But now, it was time to take back control. I spent the next few days making preparations. I filed for divorce, changed the locks on the house, and started the process of separating our finances. My wife tried to reach out to me several times, but I ignored her calls and texts. I was done with her. One evening, as I was sorting through some paperwork, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my wife standing there, looking distraught. Rob, please, can we talk? She pleaded. There's nothing left to say, I replied, my voice cold and distant. Please, just hear me out, she begged, tears streaming down her face. I sighed and stepped aside, letting her in. Fine. You've got 5 minutes. She sat down on the couch, her eyes red and swollen. Rob, I know I have hurt you. I've made terrible mistakes, but I love you. I want to fix this. It's too late for that, I said, crossing my arms. You've broken my trust, and I don't think I can ever forgive you. I'll do anything, she insisted. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. I shook my head. You've had your chance. Now it's time for you to go. She broke down again, but I stood my ground. Eventually, she realized there was no changing my mind. She gathered her things and left, her sobs echoing through the empty house. As I closed the door behind her, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This was the end of a painful chapter, but it was also the beginning of a new one. I didn't know what the future held, but I was ready to face it. In the weeks following my wife's departure, I found myself navigating the turbulent waters of a life upended. The house felt eerily quiet without her presence, and the memories of our life together haunted me at every turn. I tried to focus on work, to drown out the pain with busyness, but it was a struggle. One evening, Tommy called me with some news. Rob, I've got something you might want to see, he said, his voice serious. What is it? I asked, my curiosity piqued. Meet me at the diner. I'll explain everything there. I arrived at the diner to find Tommy already seated, a folder in front of him. He looked up as I approached and gestured for me to sit. What is going on? I asked, sliding into the booth. Tommy pushed the folder towards me. I've been digging deeper into your wife's activities, and I found something you need to know. I opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. They were financial records, detailing large sums of money being transferred from our joint account to various unknown accounts over the past few years. What is this? I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. Your wife has been siphoning money from your account, Tommy explained. She's been using it to fund her affairs, paying for hotels, gifts, and even transferring some to these other accounts. My anger flared again. How could I have missed this? She was careful, Tommy said. But now you know. You need to confront her about this. It could have serious legal implications. Armed with this new information, I decided to confront my wife one last time. I called her and arranged to meet at a public park, somewhere neutral where we could talk without causing a scene. When she arrived, she looked nervous. "Rob, what was this about?" she asked. I handed her the folder. "Explain this." Her eyes widened as she flipped through the documents. "I can explain," she began, but I cut her off. "No more lies," I said, my voice cold. "You've been stealing from me. From us. How could you do this?" "I was desperate," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know how else to keep up with everything." "I'm so sorry, Rob." "Sorry doesn't cut it," I replied. "This is fraud. You could go to jail for this." "Please, Rob, don't do this," she begged. "I'll pay it all back. Just give me a chance." I shook my head. "You've had enough chances. It's time to face the consequences of your actions." After our meeting, I contacted my lawyer and provided him with the financial records. He assured me that we had a strong case and that we could seek restitution through the divorce proceedings. It was a small comfort, knowing that justice would be served, but it didn't erase the pain of betrayal. In the meantime, I tried to rebuild my life. I reconnected with old friends, started going to the gym, and even took up a new hobby, painting. It was therapeutic, a way to express the emotions that words couldn't capture. One afternoon, while I was working on a landscape painting in my backyard, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Tommy. "Rob, I've got something else. Can you meet?" We arranged to meet at the diner again, and I couldn't shake the feeling of dread as I drove over. What else could there possibly be? When I arrived, Tommy was waiting with a serious expression. "Rob, this might be hard to hear," he began. "Just tell me," I said, bracing myself. "I found out that your wife was planning to run away with David," he said, sliding another folder across the table. "They were going to leave town, start a new life together. She had been transferring money to an account in his name." I opened the folder and scanned the evidence emails, bank statements, and even a plane ticket. "When was this supposed to happen?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Next week," Tommy replied. "But now that you know, you can stop it." I felt a mix of relief and anger. She was going to leave me, take our money, and run off with another man. But now I had the power to stop her. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and tense conversations. My lawyer moved quickly, freezing our accounts and filing the necessary paperwork to prevent her from accessing any more funds. My wife was furious, but there was nothing she could do. On the day she was supposed to leave, I confronted her one last time. "You were going to run away with him, weren't you?" I asked, holding up the plane ticket. She looked defeated, her shoulders slumping. "Yes," she admitted, "but now I see it was a mistake. It is too late for regrets," I said. "You've made your bed, now you have to lie in it." As I watched her walk away, I felt a sense of closure. This chapter of my life was finally coming to an end. I didn't know what the future held, but I was ready to face it head on. With my wife finally out of my life and the legal proceedings underway, I felt like I could breathe again. The weight of her betrayal had lifted, but I knew the scars would remain. It was time to focus on healing and rebuilding the life I had almost lost. I threw myself into my work, grateful for the distraction. My colleagues noticed a change in me, but I kept my personal struggles to myself. They didn't need to know the details. I just wanted to move forward. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I received a call from Tommy. "Hey, Rob, I've got some good news. We found more evidence of your wife's financial misdeeds. It is enough to ensure you will get a fair settlement in the divorce." "Thanks, Tommy," I said, feeling a sense of relief. "I owe you one." "Just doing my job," he replied. "Take care of yourself, Rob." The next few weeks flew by in a blur of meetings with lawyers and sorting out the details of the divorce. My wife tried to fight it, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, she had no choice but to agree to the terms. I got the house, the car, and a significant portion of our savings. It wasn't just about the money, it was about reclaiming what was mine and ensuring that she didn't get away with her deceit. As the dust settled, I decided to take a break from work and focus on myself. I took a trip to the mountains, hoping that the fresh air and solitude would help clear my mind. The cabin I rented was secluded, surrounded by trees and the sound of nature. It was exactly what I needed. One morning, as I was hiking along a trail, I came across a small, tranquil lake. I sat down on a rock by the shore, taking in the peaceful scene. The stillness of the water mirrored the calm I was starting to feel inside. While sitting there, I reflected on the past few months. The anger and betrayal had consumed me, but now I realized that it was time to let go. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could choose how to move forward. Back in town, I decided to rejoin the social scene. I had isolated myself for too long, and it was time to reconnect with old friends and make new ones. I started attending events and gatherings, enjoying the company of others without the shadow of my failed marriage hanging over me. One evening, at a friend's party, I met someone who would change everything. Her name was Emily, and she was unlike anyone I had ever met. We struck up a conversation, and before long, we were laughing and sharing stories like old friends. "Do you come to these parties often?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Not really," I admitted. "I have been keeping to myself lately, but I'm trying to change that." "Well, I'm glad you decided to come tonight," she said with a smile. "It's nice to meet someone new." As the night went on, I found myself drawn to her. There was something about Emily that made me feel at ease, like I could be myself without any pretenses. It was a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I grew closer. We went on hikes, explored the city, and spent hours talking about everything under the sun. She was a breath of fresh air, and I found myself looking forward to our time together. One evening, as we were walking through a park, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. "Rob, I've really enjoyed getting to know you, but I can't help but feel like there's something you're not telling me." I took a deep breath, knowing that she deserved the truth. "There is. I've been through a lot recently. My wife cheated on me with multiple people, and we are in the middle of a messy divorce." Emily reached out and took my hand. "I am so sorry, Rob. That must have been incredibly hard." "It was," I admitted. "But meeting you has made it easier. You've helped me see that there's still good in the world." She smiled, squeezing my hand. "I'm glad I could help. And for what it is worth, I think you are amazing. You deserve to be happy." As the months went by, my relationship with Emily blossomed. She was supportive and understanding, and she helped me see that there was life beyond the pain of my past. We built new memories together, each day bringing a little more light into my life. One evening, as we sat on the porch of my house watching the sunset, I realized how far I had come. The house that had once felt like a prison now felt like a home. And with Emily by my side, I knew that I could face whatever the future held. "Emily," I said, turning to her, "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want you to be a part of it." She smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "I want that too, Rob." In that moment, I knew that I had found something truly special. Despite the darkness of my past, I had found a new beginning, and this time, I was determined to make it last. Life with Emily was like a fresh start. Every day felt brighter, and I was genuinely happy for the first time in what felt like forever. But even as our relationship grew, there were still loose ends from my past that needed tying up. One afternoon, I received a call from my lawyer. "Rob, your divorce is almost finalized, but there is one last thing you need to address. Your ex-wife has been contesting the settlement terms." I sighed, feeling a pang of frustration. "What now?" "She is claiming that she deserves a larger portion of your assets, citing emotional distress and loss of lifestyle," he explained. "We can fight this, but it might get messy." "I don't care how messy it gets," I said firmly. "She's not getting another dime." Emily noticed the tension on my face when I hung up the phone. "Everything okay?" she asked, gently. "It's just the divorce," I replied, running a hand through my hair. "She is still trying to squeeze more out of me." Emily placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You'll get through this, Rob. You've already come so far." Her support meant everything to me, and it gave me the strength to keep fighting. I knew this battle wouldn't be easy, but I wasn't going to let my ex-wife win. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and court appearances. My ex-wife put up a fierce fight, but the evidence was overwhelmingly in my favor. The judge saw through her lies and manipulation, ruling in my favor on every count. When the final decision was announced, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was finally over. I was free. I celebrated the victory with Emily, who had been my rock throughout the entire ordeal. We went out for dinner, toasting to new beginnings and brighter days ahead. As we sat across from each other, I realized just how much I had to be thankful for. Despite everything, I'd found someone who truly cared about me, and I was ready to build a future with her. With the divorce behind me, I focused on moving forward. Emily and I decided to take a trip together, a chance to get away from it all and enjoy each other's company without any distractions. We chose a cozy cabin in the mountains, surrounded by nature and tranquility. The days were filled with hiking, exploring, and simply enjoying each other's presence. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, Emily looked at me with a thoughtful expression. "Rob, have you ever thought about what you want to do next, now that everything with your ex is behind you?" I smiled, appreciating her concern. "I have, actually. I want to start over completely, maybe even move somewhere new." "What about you?" She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I think that sounds wonderful. A fresh start, just the two of us." We talked late into the night, dreaming about the future and all the possibilities that lay ahead. It felt good to have a plan, to look forward to something positive. When we returned from our trip, I started making arrangements to sell the house. It was time to leave the past behind and embrace a new beginning. Emily and I began searching for a new place to call home, somewhere we could build a life together. One afternoon, as we were packing up the last of my things, I came across an old photo album. Flipping through the pages, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia. There were photos of happier times, moments that now felt like a lifetime ago. Emily noticed my somber expression and came over to sit beside me. "It's okay to feel sad about the past, Rob," she said softly. "But remember, it is the past. You have a bright future ahead of you." She was right. I closed the album and put it in a box, ready to move on. We eventually found a beautiful house in a small town, far away from the memories of my previous life. It was perfect, a fresh start in every sense of the word. Moving in felt like shedding an old skin, stepping into a new chapter with hope and excitement. Emily and I settled into our new home, making it our own. We spent our days exploring the town, meeting new people, and creating new memories. It was everything I had hoped for and more. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I took Emily's hand in mine. "Thank you for standing by me, for helping me see that there's more to life than the pain of the past." She smiled, squeezing my hand. "You've come a long way, Rob. I'm so proud of you. And I'm excited for our future together." In that moment, I knew I had found something truly special. Despite all the challenges and heartbreak, I had emerged stronger, with a renewed sense of purpose and a partner who truly understood me. But just when I thought everything was finally falling into place, an unexpected twist threatened to unravel it all. Just when life was starting to feel normal again, a storm cloud appeared on the horizon. One evening, as Emily and I were enjoying dinner, my phone buzzed with a message. I glanced at the screen and felt my stomach drop. It was from my ex-wife. "Rob, we need to talk. It's important. Meet me tomorrow at the old calf." I showed the message to Emily, who frowned. "What do you think she wants?" "I have no idea," I admitted, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. "But I guess I have to find out." The next day, I arrived at the calf early, my mind racing with possibilities. When my ex-wife walked in, she looked different, tired, worn out. She spotted me and made her way over, sitting down across from me. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. She took a deep breath. "Rob, I know I don't deserve your time, but there is something you need to know. It's about David." My heart skipped a beat. "What about him?" "He's been blackmailing me," she confessed, her voice trembling. "He threatened to expose everything unless I gave him money. I didn't know what to do." I felt a surge of anger. "So you were telling me you gave him our money to keep him quiet?" "Yes," she whispered. tears filling her eyes. I'm so sorry, Rob. I thought I could handle it, but it's gotten out of control. He's demanding more, and I am out of money. I need your help. I leaned back in my chair, processing what she had just said. David had manipulated her, using her infidelity to extort money. It was infuriating, but part of me couldn't help but feel a sliver of pity for her. She was in over her head, and now it was affecting me too. What do you expect me to do? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked desperate. I don't know, I just thought you should know. Maybe we can figure out a way to stop him. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Fine, give me his contact information. I'll deal with him. That evening, I told Emily everything. She listened patiently, her brow furrowed with concern. Are you sure you want to get involved? She asked. It sounds dangerous. I don't have a choice, I replied. He's threatening to expose everything. If we don't stop him, he could ruin both of our lives. Emily nodded, understanding. Just be careful, Rob. I don't want you to get hurt. The next day, I reached out to David, arranging a meeting in a public place. He seemed smug when he arrived, confident in his control over the situation. Rob, it's good to see you, he said, a sly smile on his face. What can I do for you? Cut the crap, David, I snapped. I know what you've been doing. The blackmail stops now. He raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. I don't know what you're talking about. I have all the evidence I need, I lied, hoping to rattle him. If you don't back off, I'll go to the police. Extortion is a serious crime. David's expression darkened. You think you can threaten me? I've got nothing to lose, Rob. But you've got everything to lose. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. This is your last chance. Walk away now, and we won to press charges. Keep pushing, and you will regret it. For a moment, he seemed to consider my words. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. I watched him go, my heart pounding. I didn't know if he would heed my warning, but I had to hope that he would. In the days that followed, I kept a close eye on my ex-wife's accounts and movements. David seemed to have backed off, at least for now. But the whole ordeal left me feeling uneasy, like a storm was still brewing on the horizon. Emily was my constant source of strength through it all. Her unwavering support and love kept me grounded, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. Rob, I've been thinking, maybe we should take a break from all this, go somewhere far away, just the two of us. I considered her suggestion, realizing how much we both needed a break. That sounds like a great idea. Let us do it. We made plans to take a trip to a secluded beach, somewhere we could escape from the chaos and reconnect. It was exactly what we needed, a chance to leave the past behind and focus on our future. The beach was everything we had hoped for. The sound of the waves, the warmth of the sun, and the simple joy of being together. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. One evening, as we watched the sunset, Emily turned to me with a smile. This is perfect, Rob. I'm so glad we came here. Me too, I said, pulling her close. Thank you for being my rock through all of this. She rested her head on my shoulder. We are a team, Rob. We'll get through anything together. As I held her, I realized that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I could face them with her by my side. Our love was stronger than any obstacle, and together we could overcome anything. But as the sun set on our perfect day, my phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. It was from David. Rob, we're not done. Meet me tomorrow, or everyone will know the truth. My heart sank. The storm wasn't over yet. But this time, I was ready to fight back with everything I had. The message from David turned our peaceful getaway into a ticking time bomb. I read the text over and over, trying to process the implications. David was clearly not backing down, and his threats could ruin everything Emily and I had built. Emily noticed my tense expression. Rob, what's wrong? It's David, I replied, showing her the message. He's not giving up. He wants to meet tomorrow. Her face fell. What are you going to do? I have to confront him, I said, feeling a mix of dread and determination. I need to put an end to this once and for all. The next day, I left the beach early and headed back to town, my mind racing with plans and contingencies. I arranged to meet David at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was a place where I hoped we could settle things without drawing too much attention. When I arrived, David was already there, leaning against his car with a smug look on his face. "Rob, I knew you'd come." "Let's cut to the chase," I said, stepping out of my car. "What do you want?" David chuckled. "You know what I want. I want compensation for keeping quiet about your ex-wife's little indiscretions, and if I don't get it, well, everyone will know the truth." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my anger in check. "You're not getting another dime. You've already taken enough." "Then I guess I have no choice," David said, pulling out his phone. "I'll make the call right now." Before he could dial, I took a step forward, my voice cold and steady. "You think you are untouchable, David? You think you can keep getting away with this?" He smirked. "Who's going to stop me? You?" I pulled out my own phone and hit play on a recording. It was a conversation between David and my ex-wife discussing their blackmail scheme in detail. David's face paled as he listened. "How did I have my ways?" I said, cutting him off. "And I've got more where that came from. If you don't back off, this goes straight to the police." David's expression shifted from shock to anger. "You think you can scare me with this?" "I'm not trying to scare you," I said, stepping closer. "I'm giving you a choice. Walk away now, or face the consequences." For a moment, David seemed to consider his options. Then, with a scowl, he put his phone away. "Fine. You win this round, Rob. But don't think this is over." "I'll take my chances," I replied, watching as he got into his car and sped away. As I drove back to the beach, a sense of relief washed over me. The immediate threat was gone, but I knew I had to stay vigilant. David might be gone for now, but he could resurface at any time. When I returned to the beach, Emily was waiting for me, her face etched with worry. "How did it go?" "I think I managed to scare him off," I said, pulling her into a hug. "But we need to stay alert. He could come back." Emily nodded, her grip on me tightening. "We'll face it together, Rob. Whatever happens, we'll get through it." Her words gave me strength. With Emily by my side, I felt ready to face whatever the future held. In the weeks that followed, I took extra precautions to ensure our safety. I hired a security company to install cameras around our home, and I made sure Emily and I were always aware of our surroundings. Life slowly began to return to normal, but the shadow of David's threat lingered. One evening, as we were enjoying a quiet night at home, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number. "Rob, it's over. I am leaving town. You want to hear from me again." I showed the message to Emily, who sighed with relief. "Do you think he means it?" "I hope so," I replied, feeling a cautious optimism. "But we'll stay prepared, just in case." With David seemingly out of the picture, Emily and I focused on building our future together. We continued to explore our new town, making friends and creating new memories. Our relationship grew stronger with each passing day, and I felt grateful for the love and support she gave me. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, I turned to Emily with a smile. "I have something I want to ask you." She looked at me curiously. "What is it?" I took her hand in mine, feeling a surge of emotion. "Emily, you've been my rock through everything. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes as she smiled. "Yes, Rob. Of course I will." As I slipped the ring onto her finger, I felt a sense of completeness I had never known before. Despite all the challenges and heartache, I had found my happiness. And with Emily by my side, I knew that our future was bright. But just as we started planning our wedding and dreaming about our life together, a letter arrived in the mail that would change everything once again. It was from my ex-wife, and inside was a single sheet of paper with a simple message. "You think it is over, Rob? Think again." The storm was far from over, and I knew that the fight for my happiness was just beginning. The letter from my ex-wife felt like a punch to the gut. Just when I thought the worst was behind me, she found a way to pull me back into the chaos. I showed the letter to Emily, her face mirroring my shock and disbelief. "What does she want now?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "I don't know," I replied, my mind racing. "But I'm not going to let her ruin our lives. I called Tommy and filled him in on the latest development. I need your help again, Tommy. I can deal with this alone. Don't to worry, Rob, he said, his voice steady and reassuring. I am on it. I'll dig into her recent activities and see what she's up to. In the days that followed, I felt like I was living on edge, constantly looking over my shoulder. Emily and I tried to focus on planning our wedding, but the threat from my ex-wife loomed over us like a dark cloud. One evening, as we were going through potential venues, Tommy called with an update. Rob, I found something. Your ex-wife has been meeting with David. It looks like they are plotting something together. My heart sank. What do you mean? I don't have all the details yet, but from what I've gathered, they are planning to take you down. They've been talking to lawyers, trying to find a way to get more money out of you and ruin your reputation. I clenched my fist, anger boiling inside me. What can we do? Let's meet up and come up with a plan, Tommy suggested. We need to be prepared for whatever they are planning. That night, I met Tommy at a small, discreet bar. We sat in a quiet corner, discussing our strategy. First, we need to gather as much evidence as possible, Tommy said. Recordings, documents, anything that can prove they are trying to extort you. I've already got some recordings from my last encounter with David, I replied. But we need more. Tommy nodded. I'll see what I can dig up. In the meantime, you need to be careful. Don T let them provoke you into doing something that could be used against you. The next few weeks were a tense waiting game. Tommy worked tirelessly to gather evidence, while Emily and I tried to carry on with our lives. But the stress was taking its toll on us. Emily's normally bright and cheerful demeanor was shadowed by worry, and I could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on me. One evening, as we were having dinner, Emily reached across the table and took my hand. Rob, we can't let them win. We have to stay strong, together. I squeezed her hand, grateful for her unwavering support. You are right. We'll get through this. Tommy finally called with the breakthrough we needed. Rob, I've got it. Recorded conversations, emails, everything. Your ex-wife and David are planning to fabricate evidence to make it look like you've been hiding assets. They want to drag you through a legal battle to drain you financially and emotionally. My anger flared, but I kept it in check. Send me everything. It has time to confront them. With the evidence in hand, I arranged a meeting with my lawyer and laid out the plan. We would present the evidence in court, exposing their scheme and protecting myself from their malicious attacks. The court date arrived, and I felt a mix of nerves and determination. Emily was by my side, her presence a steadying force. We walked into the courtroom, ready to face whatever came our way. As the proceedings began, my lawyer presented the evidence we had gathered, the recordings, the emails, everything. My ex-wife and David looked shocked as their plans were laid bare for all to see. The judge listened intently, then turned to my ex-wife and David. This evidence is damning. Your attempts to manipulate and extort Mr. Roberts are reprehensible. I am ruling in his favor. Relief washed over me as the judge's gavel came down. The nightmare was finally over. My ex-wife and David had been exposed for the schemers they were, and their plans had backfired spectacularly. Emily and I left the courthouse, feeling like a huge weight had been lifted from our shoulders. We celebrated with a quiet dinner, reflecting on everything we had been through. I'm so proud of you, Rob, Emily said, her eyes shining with love. You stood up for yourself and didn't let them destroy you. I couldn't have done it without you, I replied, pulling her into a hug. Thank you for believing in me. With the legal battles behind us, Emily and I focused on our future. We finalized our wedding plans, choosing a beautiful garden venue that felt like a symbol of our new beginning. The day of the wedding arrived, and as I stood at the altar watching Emily walk towards me, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and joy. When she reached me, we exchanged vows, promising to stand by each other through thick and thin. As we shared our first kiss as husband and wife, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our honeymoon was a dream come true. We traveled to a secluded island, spending our days exploring the beaches and our nights under the stars. It was a time of healing and renewal, a chance to leave the past behind and look forward to a bright future. One evening, as we watched the sunset, Emily turned to me with a smile. We made it, Rob. Despite everything, we are here. I kissed her softly. Yes, we did, and I'm excited for all the adventures to come. As we returned home, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The shadows of my past had finally been banished, and I was ready to embrace the future with Emily by my side. Life continued, filled with new challenges and triumphs, but through it all, our love remained strong. Together, we built a life filled with laughter, love, and endless possibilities. And as I looked into Emily's eyes, I knew that no matter what came our way, we would face it together, stronger and more resilient than ever before.